Alright people, welcome back. In this video we're going to be doing a little observational drawing following up from what we were doing in class. So this is just kind of reiterate what we already talked about, or maybe for some of you out there that missed class and are just playing a little game of catch up, right? So this apple that I got here, this is a great object to work with because it's got a lot going on. Observational drawing, the whole point of it is to slow down and really observe. Look at what the object is. Look at what it is you're going to be drawing. Think about all the different lines you see in it, the variations of tone. So I like to just kind of take a moment, observe, look at it, analyze. I see lots of hatched lines that are going vertical up and down the skin of this apple. I see some longer lines. I see some much shorter lines, those reddish marks. I see little dots of red, dots that maybe are like kind of a greenish brown. What I'm trying to point out here to you guys is it's so easy to pick up an apple and say, yeah, it's red. I see a little bit of green. And that's your observation. And I want you to really get off of that. And I want you to really think about really what it is you see, not what you think you see. That's the key to observational drawing, is to get out of your mind and not draw what you think is there, but to draw what is actually in front of you. All right? So here we have this apple with lots of different variations of reds and greens and some yellows and some browns, lots of different types of lines. So we have a lot of information to feed off of, right? Next, I'm going to kind of think about, how do I envision this apple sitting on this piece of paper, right? What are the proportions of the apple? Yeah. What are the size of the apple? When I'm drawing, I really don't ever want to draw any smaller than this actual object. Now, depending on what the object is, maybe you do want to draw a little bit smaller. You know, if I'm doing a car or something, of course I'm going to draw it smaller. But with an apple that fits almost into my palm, about the size of my palm, to draw any smaller than this is going to be losing or jeopardizing a lot of the detail or the ability to capture that detail. So I want to draw at least in proportion of the same size of the apple. Wow, my nails are really filthy. Been working with a little bit of paint lately, so my apology. Yeah, so keeping it in proportion to what we have, and about the real size of it. Now I'm going to be drawing the apple kind of at this angle here, and I'm going to be setting it kind of off my page slightly, so you won't exactly see the same angle that I'm looking at, just a heads up. Today I'll be using an H pencil, right, so we know it's going to be a little bit harder lead density. I do have a 2B on hand just in case I need to darken some of those lines, but I'm going to start off really light, right? Before I start doing my actual drawing itself, I might want to get a little feel. It's always good to kind of get a feel for the tool you're working with. Just kind of see how that pencil is going to be making some marks. You know, how the edge of the tip of the pencil is kind of feeling on the paper. Just getting a general idea of, you know, how it feels in my hand today. Okay, yeah. Just doing a little doodling, a little scribbling. Nothing serious. All right, so to begin, proportion. How are we going to capture this proportion of this apple onto this paper? Visualizing. All right? You want to think about, how is that apple going to sit on your paper? And you kind of want to just take a mental map, an image of that apple, and envision how it's going to look on your paper. Just kind of imagining, you know, how it's sitting on your paper. Is it sitting down here, way down here, up here? Now, I'll just give you a quick tip. We're going to do this apple drawing in 3 stages. So let's try to get 3 different drawings on the paper. So imagine dividing your paper somewhat by thirds. That'll kind of help, all right? Next, we're going to think about using what I call a bounding box. Imagine if you were to draw a box around the apple and the apple is touching all four sides of that box. How big is that box going to be sitting on your paper? Okay, so let's see. I'm going to imagine my apple is going to fit into this box here. All right. Maybe a little wider. Now, you don't want to draw your bounding box too dark. You don't want to use too much pressure, because in theory you want to really have your drawing focused on the apple. And if you need to, you want to be able to erase those lines later on. Alright, I'm going to erase this one little bit of line here. Just don't want to get confused. So we're looking at something like that. Do you have to erase those bounding box later on? Do you have to erase what I call your construction lines? No, not necessarily. Sometimes it's nice to leave those construction lines in your drawing because it kind of shows the way the artist is thinking. And for you guys, I really like to see the way you're thinking. You know, it gives me kind of a visual view into your thoughts, into your ideas, and that's going to really help me as a teacher. Okay, so don't feel like you have to erase those lines. But with that said, don't make them too dark. All right, we want to be able to be sure that the drawing is focused on the apple. From there, what is the general shape of the apple? Right, it's kind of got an oval, circular shape. So from here, I might begin by drawing out kind of an oval, circular shape. Before I do that, I recognize, though, that the top of the apple and the bottom of the apple kind of has a flattish feel. It's not a perfect circle. It's kind of flat at the top and flat at the bottom. So keeping that in mind, now the lines I'm making right now may not show up on the video, but I'll go over them and I'll make it a little bit darker where I need to so that you can kind of see what's happening. All right? Again, if I move the apple off the screen, don't fret. It's still there. No magic. Just bear with me. My focus right now is not on the screen, but it's really on the apple. Observational drawing. All right? That's where my attention should be. And that's how it is for you guys too. All right? Too often am I in class and have you guys working on observational drawing, and what are you looking at? You're not looking at the apple, you're looking at your paper, right? That's great, but your eyes need to go back and forth between your paper and that apple. Otherwise, you're not doing observational drawing. You're drawing out of your imagination, and that's not going to build your skills. That's not what these assignments are about. All right, there we go. It's always kind of strange doing this videos as I'm drawing, because when I draw, when I make my art, I don't talk. Kind of just keeping quiet, so it's funny to have to constantly hear myself. Alright, so that's the general shape right there of this apple. Okay. Now where I'm sitting, I recognize the light source is coming from this direction. It's coming, there's a window in front of me and shining light down onto my table. So I have a lot of lighter areas up in here, the top of the apple, and then the shadows mostly in the bottom left, but it's also kind of the bottom right as well. Getting some reflective light coming up off the paper, off the table, hitting the bottom and the right side of the apple. Just good observations. It's good to be aware of that. You know, that's going to really help you with your details as you go further. All right. So if this side over here is in shadow, I'm going to go ahead and just make these lines a little bit darker. All right. And I guess I should comment too. The bounding box, 4 sides. You can see how all 4 sides of that apple are in contact with that bounding box. I don't want to see your apple drawings floating inside of that box. All right? The idea is not to frame it so it just can kind of float aimlessly inside. It's not so that you can draw your apple outside of the box. It should be touching all 4 sides. All right? That's very crucial to keep the correct proportion. Let's let's see here. Over here, maybe a little bit lighter. This looks okay. All right. Now I'm going to start recognizing some of the key detail. All right. These lines that I have, these marks in the skin. I'm going to go ahead and just start to add in some of these very natural looking curved lines. Not going too dark, I'm using about medium pressure right now. And for the most part, these lines are following the form of the apple, right? They're just going parallel with one another, from the top to the bottom, and vice versa, of the apple. Down around here, it's a little bit darker from what I see. And these aren't necessarily lines, but again, more like marks. So I'm holding my pencil a little bit loose right now and letting it kind of just wander a little bit to make those marks. It's very, very loose, almost like a scribble. In my head, I know you can't see what I'm doing, but my head is going back and forth from looking at the apple to looking at my drawing. Looking at the apple, looking at the drawing. Taking a snapshot of the apple, taking a snapshot of that visual information, then transferring it onto the paper through my hand into my pencil. All right. So just kind of starting to add some detail to the side of the apple. Maybe I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to look at some of the form of the apple. What makes this apple more than just an oval, kind of natural looking shape, but actual form that we recognize as the apple. And I think one of the key things that makes the apple shape, the apple form, is this right in here, right? And so we're going to kind of think about how we can add that. So just a little divot at the top. This little kind of smiley face line up here. What this line right here does is it indicates that there's an edge that's in front of the back of the apple. And we can actually even take that further by adding some more of those curved lines that we see on the skin. Those lines that are following top to bottom, bottom to top, which almost look like they're coming out of or going into that indentation. All right. Maybe over here we can make some of these lines a little bit thicker. Now with a drawing like this, for this particular exercise, this task, I am not so concerned with drawing every single detail exactly how I see it in this apple. What I'm concerned with doing is conveying the information that I see in the apple in a way that accurately represents what I see in my drawing. Okay? I'm not going for perfection. I'm not going for a complete, real representation of exactly what I see, but more so a rendering, a drawing that accurately represents what I see. I hope that makes sense to you guys. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you get so caught up in trying to draw exactly what you see, every single little detail in this apple at this stage, it can become frustrating for you. And I don't want you to burn out. I don't want you to feel that way about your artwork. I want you to be gaining confidence and understanding and enjoying this process. There's a time and place in drawing, in observational drawing, in which you're going to want to capture every single detail of the object you're looking at. And that's not what we're going for right now. It's more just you getting the experience of what it's like to train yourself, to train your eyes to observe, and to transmit that visual information into your hand, through your pencil, onto your paper. And to get more experience in recognizing the different types of lines, the different tones, the different little shapes, and how all that information, how all those different visual elements work together in creating an interesting composition, an interesting drawing. All right? That's what we're working on. Does your drawing look like an apple? Is your drawing the shape of an apple, or is it really showing an implied form of apple? Does it have that sense of 3 dimension? Does it show variations in tones of highlights and shadows that capture the direction of light? So up here, I'm going to zoom in a second here to kind of show you a little bit better what I'm doing. I think the height of my camera at this moment might be a little bit too high for you to kind of see, particularly working with the H pencil. My lines might be a little bit too light. Here, why don't we just pause for a second? I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Let's see what madness I've been working on. Does that look like an apple to you guys? Maybe, maybe not. We can kind of bring this line over here a little bit darker. How's that? I'm going to add this little detail in here. There we go. Yeah, my pencil, it's got this wandering quality, right? It's kind of, as I'm visually exploring my apple, the pencil is just an extension of how my eyes are bouncing around, kind of wandering. Where are my eyes going? It's kind of leading my pencil. And if you notice too, I'm not really using any shading right now. No shading. This is strictly just lines and mark making. That's all we're working on right now. I know a lot of you guys want to get in there and start doing some shading, making some shadow. Yeah, I hear you. I get it. But that's not what we're doing right now. We're strictly just giving this apple some life through lines and marks. And I think what I'm going to do to convey a little bit more light coming from this side, remember I said my light source is coming from this direction higher up, I'm going to kind of leave this a little bit blank in this area, or just less information. That kind of helps helps the drawing kind of have the feel that there's a highlight over here. A little bit more marks being made on this side down here, conveying that sense of shadow. That works for me. Yeah. Um, maybe in here, got some few more marks, more shadow. You know what? Honestly, you guys, I'm happy with this, with where it is. And if you get to something like this, that's great. All right, something like that, just convey the apple shape. Now remember, this is going to be 3 drawings, right? This is the first of 3. So let's be thinking about how we want our next drawings to be sitting, and we'll take a break and come back to it.